Welcome to Bad Ideas, the show where we look at misfires, mistakes, and miscalculations from all throughout history.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg, and today's episode is brought to you by our featured patron, Ayler20A6. Tony has the bad idea for us this week. Tony, what are we learning about today?
We are going to be talking about WeWork and the crash that is currently happening as we speak.
I actually got some news notifications for this very topic. It was weird. You told me ahead of time, like, I'm doing this WeWork thing. And then I have this Google News thing on my phone where if I'm bored, I'm like, well, I guess I'll freak out about the coronavirus. And
I've been doing that all morning.
Popped up with like, hey, have you heard about how bad WeWork sucks? And I was like, I kind of have, but I'm going to wait for Tony to tell me more.
This is a story that is definitely ongoing. It's not quite over yet, but you'll see how bad it's gotten over the course of this. WeWork is a shared office space company that started in New York under Andy Neumann and Miguel McLevy. A shared office space is a simple idea, really. You have a business you want to start that needs a place because you don't want to entertain your clients in your studio apartment, but real estate is prohibitively expensive. WeWork provides you with an office, custom tailored to your needs, covers things like your internet service provider, utilities, and also gives you access to conference rooms, giant open co-op workspaces, and a full-service barista, as well as a ton of other perks. The design is all very modern, clean, and some would even say slick. The walls are laden with misspelled inspirational quotes about sweat in the palm of your hands and how you can do it.
Are they intentionally misspelled?
Yes, it's the whole, internet, if you replace a K with a C and weird things like that, just try to make it look trendy.
So it's like Jocko Willink, but as a meme?
Sort of.
Okay. I don't understand. I thought I understood, and then we got to the, trendy misspelled quotes, and I could get, trendy inspirational quotes, and I could get misspelled memes, but I can't mesh them together in my head, and that's probably not the point we want to get stuck on, Tony.
Well, it's just weird because it's like some of the posters remind me of the little signs that divorced wine trunks put up on their walls to be inspired first thing in the morning. It's like, no day but today. Do what you love. I only drink on days that end in Y.
Some of those are the same.
Considering you could actually get microbrew beer the entire time, just out of the tap whenever you work at these places, you actually could kind of get lit all day. This is also unique because I think this is the first time we've had a bad ideas where we actually went and investigated it ourselves. I actually got to go to a WeWork space. Yeah,
don't give me the we on this. I have not been. I don't think I could afford to step in the door from what you've told me.
Well, it's $600 for an office space that's basically like a 4x4 cube.
Right.
It's interesting. I did go and try the kombucha that was on tap and the cold brew. I checked it out, and you can get some really, really fancy office space. The particular office space I was looking at was about $600, maybe $625, somewhere in that range, depending on how their fees turned out. And you were actually overlooking the Denver Capitol in downtown Denver in a building that I always wanted to check out the interior of. So at least that was kind of nice. So, the office spaces here aren't necessarily the problem except for the cost of leasing these sorts of high-rise building spaces, and we're going to get into that a lot later.
Yeah, I was going to interject. I think I could buy an entire other house for that amount of money per month. But it wouldn't overlook downtown Denver, so...
Yeah, you definitely couldn't buy a downtown Denver condo for $600 a month. That's just the difference between Colorado and Florida real estate. So you're asking yourself, what is wrong with this? How could this be a bad thing for me and my business? Well, the bad idea isn't so much using these spaces as the massive bleeding money orifice that is WeWork and the following of the cult of We.
Is that a real thing that they say themselves? Are they calling themselves the cult of We?
No, they are calling themselves the We generation. Everything is a we, we work, we thrive, we whatever. It's the media that's called it the cult of we.
Okay. They know that that's another word for urine, right? Nintendo, nobody told Nintendo about this, and I felt really bad because they named 2 generations of consoles after urine. You would have thought that these people, who are at least Americans, might have seen that one coming.
I guess that it's also they're trying to do the whole reversal of the me generation and make it the we generation. But this is because Andy Neumann is more prototypical guru than he is a CEO. He's a long-haired dude with aspirations of becoming the first trillionaire. He also thinks that he can literally save the world through love. He talks very slowly, explaining how we all belong to the we generation. that it is always we before me, and that through this shared progress, our species and business can find salvation.
And also, I need $1 trillion.
Yeah,
for
a
some
full
reason.
trillion.
I can't be happy without that trillion.
Well, he's going to get a lot closer to that trillion than we ever will.
You speak for yourself, sir. I got 30 good years left.
Now tell me if you've heard this song and dance before. Brilliant orator comes up with an idea that may have some merit. Orator uses his skills to convince people that he is the second coming of entrepreneurial Christ mixed with Gandhi and Steve Jobs. Venture capitalists drool over him and shotgun money into his coffers based on charisma and not, say, a viable business plan. Looking at you, Theranos.
You know, I knew you were going there, but I gotta defend whatever Mr. WeWork's name is. I've forgotten it already, and I'm sorry.
Andy Neumann.
At least he did build offices that stood up. You know?
Yeah, and there
like,
still are some of them.
You could pay for an office and then go and sit in that office. Theranos
Yeah, it's not like an impossible thing like Theranos.
just made up some stuff.
And then tried to hide the fact that they were making up stuff. Which, if you guys want to go back to an old episode, I think that one's a pretty good one.
I think so too.
After several failed companies, including one that tried to sell knee and elbow padded clothing for toddlers, Adam Neumann had a much more viable idea. He started Green Desk after noticing how many buildings were empty after the 2008 financial crisis. How the office space was being wasted that tons of new upstart entrepreneurs couldn't quite afford a full floor of an office building. He convinced a New York landlord to help him get in on the action, and they started leasing workspaces for companies that needed it. Once again, this was actually a good idea, and he would end up selling it for a couple $1 million. Like, the Green Desk idea wasn't bad, even if they did have these weird things where they were just trying to cash in on, like, the word sustainability. Like, that's the whole Green Desk thing. They were very concerned about sustainability, but as far as I can tell, they weren't doing anything even like solar panel. So it's a little bit weird, but whatever.
But still, like, this is Uber for offices. Kind of, right? Like, or maybe or Airbnb for offices. Like, it's a good idea.
Yeah, and even if you're just coming in there to to pop in for the day and chill, which, by the way, if you want to use their common shared space in the modern WeWorks, it's like $290, and it's literally like a bench seat, like in a big open space. It's pretty much just going to a coffee shop.
That's at least better than the 600 you quoted me the first time. And if you buy coffee every day.
That's the way I was thinking of it. Like, if you bought a coffee every day, that's like $5 or $6. That's almost the cost of the office space. Like, so that isn't the worst idea if you wanted a really chill place and you drink like 8 to 10 cold brews a day. It wouldn't be the worst idea, especially if you got kids at home or something like that. But $290 still seems a little bit steep. Shared workspaces can be great for some people, although I will say there's a huge difference in quality between these places. Some are nice booths where you can quietly get work done, reserve bigger rooms as needed. You can get a working cubicle for as little as $40 a month in some of these places, and that includes coffee. Some are like open-air cafeterias where you have to look across a sea of expensive MacBooks and hipsters who smell like vinyl and the odor of vegan rot as they try to find new ways to spin the word sustainability into a viable business plan without actually anything to sell. But that's just part of playing the game. Anyway, my biases aside, the WeWork spaces are very nice and would leave a solid impression on customers. This impression also wowed investors as Adam Neumann started pulling in massive funds from places like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and most importantly, SoftBank, and the specific person, Masayoshi-san, who runs SoftBank. Have you ever heard of SoftBank?
Never heard of SoftBank.
Well, SoftBank is one of the biggest venture capitalist companies in the entire world, and they have a reputation for nailing some of the most lucrative startups ever. You may have heard of some of the businesses they hold major stakes in: Sprint, Boston Dynamics, Alibaba, Uber, and many more. Like, they are the ones who got into the ground floor of a lot of those different things, and they've made a considerable amount of money off of it. Even if companies like Uber are kind of losing money right now, they're actually slowly working towards solvency. During a very quick meeting, Adam Neumann met Masayoshi-san. In standard fashion, Neumann walked out in his graphic tee and sandals and gave him a tour of the WeWork office in Chelsea, New York. 15 minutes later, Masayoshi told Neumann that he was crazy but not crazy enough. He then wrote a check for $300 million. A few months later, this investment would be up to $4.4 billion.
Okay. I mean,
like, this is actually something that Masayoshi is known for, where he's very, very quick. He gets like a feeling about these things, and it's worked so many times that his investors just want him to do what he does. So, like, he didn't do any diligence, he didn't look at any books, he didn't understand exactly what they were looking at for their growth model. He just wrote them basically a blank check.
I mean, maybe it's a 9 times out of 10 kind of feeling. You know, that's still pretty good. Maybe he struck out on this one, but Obviously, we've heard of Uber and all those other places you named off, so
As long as he's like mostly winning, it's probably going to be okay. Although the investment that he's put in this is very, very substantial, and there's some problems going on at SoftBank because of it.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about that.
While all this is going on, Adam Neumann's wife, Rebecca, was working hard on several projects for the We Corporation. She didn't believe that her kids were being taught enough in early grade school about being entrepreneurs, so she started the We Grow School. The experimental school would have about 100 students and would cost $42,000 per year in tuition.
Not college,
Nope.
right?
This is for grade schoolers too, like
They're
little
gonna teach your
kindergartners
kid how
and
to
so on.
spell. My kid learned how to read super good at the free one they have down the road.
I learned how to run a lemonade stand on my own. I didn't need a $42,000 a year school teaching me how to do it.
Maybe a little encouragement is nice, but not $42,000 a year worth of encouragement.
Yeah, it just seems like if you did that for 10 years and you spent $500,000 on that education, that's a lot of work to get even that paid for. Rebecca was just as eccentric as Adam in many ways, and would often fire employees based off of the vibe they gave off. And this is costing them a lot in lawsuits right now for discriminations because she got a lot of bad vibes from older people and just got rid of them. So there's a few lawsuits out because of that right now.
Is it illegal to fire people for being old?
Yeah, ageism is very illegal. It's considered discrimination.
I didn't realize that.
And when I say older, I'm talking like early 40s. Like, she just didn't like
So
people
not
that
like
were
you're
not, like,
60
super
and
young.
your back isn't good for picking up 50-pound boxes anymore, sir.
No, like, you're a contractor who's 40 years old and does construction, and I don't like your vibe, so you're fired.
I don't even know if that's ageism. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
You can't be ageist against 40-year-olds. I mean, you can, but...
Well, now she's almost that age, so... But yeah, she's a very strange person, and considering the hippie pseudoscience-based lifestyle she often tried to push on her employees, no one would be surprised to know that she is actually the cousin of Gwyneth Paltrow. So the goop lifestyle has seeped into this company.
What's the root of that tree going on with?
I don't know. I'm sure we could do an episode on Goop someday, except for the fact that Goop is making money hand over fist. So it's like, is pseudoscience a bad idea if you can capitalize on it?
Leaded gasoline made a lot of money too, Tony. We can talk about stuff that doesn't work.
Rebecca would end up holding titles such as strategic thought partner and various others, but it mostly seemed like she was there to fuel her own self-indulgent search for herself. If nothing else, she was part of why the company tried to enforce vegetarianism and wouldn't allow meat in their offices until a lawsuit popped up.
That's got to be rough. You pay $600 and you can't bring your bologna sandwich to work.
Yeah, there were a lot of complaints about that, so they ended up relenting later. Now, this is when some shifty things started happening with Adam. He owned a company called We Holdings, which is an entirely separate company from WeWork, and he bought the trademark to the word we, and then sold it to his own company for $6 million.
Good business plan if you can work it out, I guess.
Yeah.
Got all that investment money from China, might as well spend it on something.
Yep. He also would buy real estate or portions of real estate and immediately lease them to the WeWork company. I don't actually think that this is illegal, and it's kind of crafty to go out and find this real estate, buy it up before your company can, and then lease it to your own company so that you get the liquid money coming in. You're basically landlord to the other corporation. It seems a little bit like laundering, but it's not quite, I don't think. I don't think it's illegal. It's just shady.
I mean, that's just screwing over your company, right? Like, unless you're renting it for like $1 a month and you're like, man, okay, I can rent this to you way cheaper than you would be able to get it otherwise. You're eating the hen that lays the golden eggs, or it's a goose. Yeah. Whatever kind of bird lays the golden eggs, you've killed it, and you didn't even look for the golden egg, you're just eating the meat. Because you were hungry for chicken.
And considering that the company has almost $18 billion a year in liabilities on leases, like, he definitely wasn't charging them $1 to come stay at his place.
No, I assume not. But I'm saying that's the only way it's not just him stabbing his company in the back because he is selfish.
The lavish parties started rolling harder after the 2017 investments. Some of them were in tent groups in the woods outside of London, like some really swanky tents, kind of a weird corporate retreat. And some were just these incredible, like, rent an entire hotel, put a giant food spread out there, get Florence and the Machine and Rihanna to come do private performances, which could not have been cheap. And this is part of how they kind of built their legend up. They would bring their investors in and throw these giant parties. They would make it look like we've got all this money so we can be frivolous. We can do whatever we want. We can purchase any other company we want, like Q and all these other smaller management companies. We can go after every other place that does this sort of office leasing. We can just do whatever we want, and we can party while doing it. And it was just weird to read about how expensive some of this stuff would get. Like, they wanted to put the other people out of business so bad that they would contact people who had leased with other companies like WeWork, and then would tell them that they could have 2 years of free office space if they switched over. Like, they were just trying to pull everybody out of everyone else at major cost to themselves just to try to stick it to these other places.
Man, like, that's, on the one hand, it's a decent strategy, right? Like, any business sort of, who wants to get rid of competition, they're going to try to price them out. But if you're going to then do that and then crash yourself so that nobody can have any office space, that seems like just kind of scummy.
And it's mostly hurting your workers more than anybody else. It's not creating value for your space. It's not really doing anything positive. This is when the company was valued at an astounding $20 billion. Most rejoiced at the idea of the new We generation doing so well, but some economists wondered where the money was really going. On top of this, you started to hear about what it was like to work for WeWork, and it's an incredible slog. Adam Neumann wanted complete control over his employees and their social lives. Often he would schedule mandatory dinners immediately after working hours, but food wouldn't be served until late into the night, like 10 or 11. Then mandatory group meetings would happen and workers would be there till 3 a.m. and they'd be expected to be back by 8 a.m. the next day. When one of his workers tried to unionize or to fight these hours, they were immediately fired. Many of the employees were simply trying to wait for the IPO to drop so they could cash out. They thought that it might be like the original Instagram employees or any number of other tech companies where being on the ground floor would set them for life. It's an understandable goal. Grind and earn shares and cash out when you can, buy a nice house, and live the good life at 40. Unfortunately, the IPO would never come.
Like, never, ever?
Well, it's interesting what happened with the IPO, and that's what we're getting to right now.
Oh, okay.
In 2019, the company would finally open its books enough for investors to really understand what they were getting into.
Which is what you have to do when you're going to do an IPO. You have to let everybody look at your stuff so people who are investing know what they're getting into.
Yep, and it's called an S1. JP Morgan led them into filing this S1, and it's basically a document where you have to detail everything about your company. You don't have to give super specifics, but you have to give a good general picture. This one would be about 200 pages long. Before they actually put this paperwork in, they were valued at $47 billion. Which puts them as bigger than the Ford Motor Company and many other companies that are actually building something. Instead of giving a succinct definition of what the company does, their S1 starts with a standard yoga speak that you've come to expect from someone who really is selling ideas like this. And they said, "We dedicate this to the energy of we, greater than any of us, but inside of each of us."
I mean, like, these are not bad ideas as far as, like, having some idea of a shared purpose and wanting people to work together. Like, I hate that these people are dragging positive things through the mud by just turning them into their garbage slogans for their terrible company.
Exactly. Because if this guy had actually just slowed it down a little bit instead of going like sprawling, I get the feeling that we would be talking about WeWork as maybe like a $10 to $15 billion company that's really positive and people are happy with them.
And I keep thinking about other companies as well, specifically Elon Musk and Tesla, where there's a lot of people who have a lot of questions about, is Tesla profitable? Is this a real thing? Are we going to be able to sustain this? And Elon Musk has that same kind of, not guru-y personality, but pushes people kind of hard, rubs people the wrong way, tends to go about things in an unusual way. And I never know what to think about that. He seems to be succeeding so far still.
He is doing incredible things, but he's also like, he's an engineer guru, not a business guru. So there's a difference in how he presents himself, and it's a lot more stern rather than like walk up with sandals and give you a giant hug.
Right,
so
but
I'm
saying
why he rubs people the wrong way. But I see what you're saying also. We're going to get into the end of this with the idea of like the unicorn investment, where people will see something that's different and they prop it up because they're investing in a person more than they are completely in an actual company.
Or even in the future.
Yes.
They're investing in like, oh, this is how it's going to be. Maybe it is, but like, it's not going to be $47 billion in one company this way.
Yeah. And the thing I would say about Elon Musk is at least he's forwarding technology. Like, it's a huge investment that's probably going to cost a lot of people things, but the stuff we're getting out of it is pretty damn cool.
This is not a knock on Elon Musk. This is just me saying I, as a sort of casual consumer of news and information, am not able to tell ahead of time what the good ideas in this sphere are. If somebody came to me and said, hey, I looked at the financials for this company and they're kind of shady, I would have no idea if I should listen to that person or not, or how to check.
There were a few economists that were jumping all over this and saying it was a great idea. And then there were a few people, especially a guy over at Harvard, I think his name was like Greenwood, that were just like sounding the alarms. People were like, why can't you just be happy that this is working? And he's like, it's just not solvent. Turns out that he was right and that analysts sometimes know what they're talking about. But back to the S1 filing. They use the term elevate the world's consciousness numerous times. There are so many times where they're just not even talking about their financials. They're like trying to skirt around the fact that these documents showed that they were losing over $1 billion a year. And they used the word community 150 times trying to talk about like that, like it's going to end up just somehow fixing that giant hole. It reads more like a 220-page Facebook post than it does a business offering.
So do they do get into like, okay, but here's how much we're making and here's how much everything costs kind of stuff?
Yeah, they cover the things that like their actual revenues and things. And that's how people realized that they were losing $100 million a month. Especially because of the cost of overhead and mostly the leases on real estate. It's hard to sell enough desks to make up for $18 billion in liabilities, even if you are charging $600 for just a few small square feet.
Yeah, that's the thing that doesn't track with me as far as there should be a way for this to work. There should be a way where you can rent out office space like hotels rent out rooms.
Yeah.
And just...
It's basically called don't go into a giant skyscraper where the real estate is extremely high. Like some of the most successful shared workspaces are usually in like hipster neighborhoods and stuff where it's a little expensive, but not skyscraper expensive.
Yeah, I guess they were going for that. You're going to bring people to this office and they are going to be so impressed.
Yeah. And I got some pictures of it. I thought it was very, very nice, but I expected it to be a little bit glossier than that. But I went to one of their first locations they ever opened. So maybe it just didn't match up with like the Google-esque pictures you see like on their new structures. But it was pretty nice to be able to see that you could have a gym and sauna and various other things while you work.
Okay. Now I'm just Googling other co-work places.
When the world saw what WeWork was worth, the whole facade came crashing down. They immediately started looking to fire employees, cutting thousands right off the bat in the most awkward way possible. They told employees at a Run DMC private concert that many of them would not be returning to work anymore and they needed to bring their laptops in on Monday.
What? That's a sentence right there. Okay.
And then Run DMC actually ended up performing after that, so I imagine it was just a very awkward show.
I feel like I've heard about this somewhere, but... Wow. Like, we've paid these people top dollar to come and sing for no reason. Also, you're all fired. All right, let's get them up here.
I suppose it's a way to prevent altercations from happening, but it just seems very unwise. Stuff like this is going to be in like the show Succession and various other business movies from like here to the end of time. As they shed some of the cost of overhead with these mass firings, the board decided that they had had enough of Adam Neumann and voted to oust him as their CEO. He also voted to oust himself out because he believed the focus was too much on him rather on the company. In order to do this, they had to buy his majority of shares. In what might be the biggest golden parachute in history, they had to give him $1.7 billion to get him out of there.
Really?
He also charged them a $185 million consulting fee.
And I assume this is like contract stuff where... because he's the CEO, just gets to write down, and if you get rid of me, I get $1 billion and a pony made out of gold and 3 cheeseburgers.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went.
Okay.
And also, if somebody was like, will you leave? Like, I'll vote myself out of this company for $1.7 billion. I would easily do that. But it's just absolutely ridiculous, like how big that golden parachute is. And right now, Adam Neumann is basically just jet setting around the world, like trying to keep a low profile. He's not really talking much to media. He's not doing anything other than just kind of hanging out with his family. So I kind of get that. That's probably the best move for him, especially because he does have 5 kids, and you don't want them getting any sort of undue attention for him being an idiot.
Yeah, man. That's still super scummy.
Remember whenever I said he was going to be closer to the first trillionaire than we will? I think he might have kind of got that one. Although he only does have 1% of a trillion. Almost 2%.
I just cannot. I mean, I guess you said it. I cannot believe we have to compliment the man for shutting his mouth about, the amazing ride he took for everybody and just, living on the billion that he got. I can't believe that you had to say those words. It makes me very upset.
Currently, WeWork is valued at $8 billion and falling. They still have offices, and with downsizing, they might survive. But most economists are expecting bankruptcy and restructure by 2021. Like I said, they might be able to pull this out. They are doing a lot of things to get rid of certain properties to make sure they're cutting overhead. They're selling off a lot of the side businesses that were sort of a distraction in an effort to get liquid money back, as well as just make it a simpler process. But I think the damage is already done. Well, we might have to revisit this one in a year or two just to see what's happening with it.
The worst part to me is that they, again, nerfed everybody else who was trying to do the same thing. I mean, it's still possible to get shared workspace. I am looking at some in my area right now, kind of in my area. You got to drive to Pensacola, but, there are other people who are doing it. But the fact that they're like, no one can do this but us, and then they did it so badly that they shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, my favorite part of that is they might have actually devalued like the stock prices on shared workplaces, but that program to snipe people's customers went so badly that it just cost them money and almost nobody did it. Like, even whenever they were offered free space, a lot of businesses were like suspect of what was happening. They just didn't go for it.
I guess good for them.
They were offering like triple and quadruple bounties for getting these sorts of people if they left another working space to their salespeople, and the salespeople were having trouble prying businesses out of the shared workspaces. So, thankfully, that didn't do too much against it. I think that the industry will recover. Hopefully, the drop in their stock shares doesn't kill some of these companies right off the bat, though. The bad idea here is to let someone with insane narcissistic personality types burn through your assets and make baffling choices with cash just because he can. Shared office space isn't a bad business, and many of the companies offering it are solvent and a boon to the small worker. When I went to WeWork, they wanted to give me a fancy office spot for around $650 per month plus fees. And by fancy, I mean a single desk in a room with floor-to-single windows with no privacy. But I did have access to a lot of other cool stuff. It was essentially a closet, but if you paid more, you could get some pretty incredible spaces that had just giant windows all over the place, and I saw some businesses that looked like they were thriving. Most of them were actually marijuana dispensary companies and their accountants, so I suppose that they were just like buying that space because they could. They have to do something with the massive amounts of money they're doing. But you can do so much better on price. You can find these spaces for under $100 and get the most bare bones experience. There's no reason to be paying 6 times that. Like, if you're going to be paying $600, you can actually get some really nice office space in most cities. So this is just WeWork promising the world and not being able to deliver. And it's because they paid millions of dollars to designers to design these spaces. They are handing out too many things for free, and it just wasn't a solvent business model. And they had bigger dreams than they had actual ability to make these things happen. The main bad idea there is overvaluing yourself and people buying into the hype of a CEO that really isn't proven and mostly talks in yoga speak.
I mean, again, it's one of those things where it kind of works sometimes. There's some weird CEOs, hiring some designers to really punch up your products. That's sort of the whole Apple model, especially when Steve Jobs was alive. We're going to charge you an arm and a leg, but it's going to look great. I hate that it works sometimes, and you can't tell. I just need a sign for a thing that's like, this is definitely always going to fail.
Well, I think if you were to look at the S1s, you would instantly know that it wasn't going to work out. So
yeah, maybe it's just like spending a bunch of money you don't have.
And buying businesses that aren't related to your work. Like, they spent several million. I want to say like $15 million buying a wave pool company. Just like random stuff like that. Just because they thought it was cool to have wave pools.
In the workspace or...
Not in the workspace, just in general. It was just one of the side companies they decided to buy. Part of what they did with all those billions was just buy up every company they thought was kind of cool and overpay for all of them.
I'm going to go out, I'm going to give my own bad idea and just be like, don't be terrible at business. Like, it's okay to go out of business. Lots of people try and fail. Restaurants, like, nobody's going to ding you for, you tried to open a restaurant and didn't work, but, like, do the one thing at least, like, pick something focused. You can profit at.
Like, business acquisitions work best whenever your company has the skills to kind of grab onto another company and enhance that company that you're buying. A lot of companies forget, like when Quaker Oats bought Snapple, like they didn't know that their skill set wouldn't match up and that they would ultimately end up losing almost $1 billion.
Those are two food companies though, right? GE buying insurance stuff is maybe a better example of what were you thinking? GE's now basically toast. All right, we've gone way off topic, and I'm sorry.
My final thought on this is that more than anything, the bad idea is this evaluation industrial complex that seems to be cropping up every few years. Companies work extremely hard to make themselves more valuable than they are. Then the people who are at the top purge themselves, the initial people investing make money, and then it becomes a hollow shell of itself. It's like with Instagram, it's with tons of these other companies where they get so valued and they spend so much money acquiring them, and then they're not really sure what to do with them afterwards. It's just not a tenable business model, but it's something that we keep seeing over and over and over again. Even from giant mutual funds that are a part of these investments, people are still buying into it. And honestly, like, we need to be looking at what works in the long run more than what's hot at the moment.
All right. Well, I'll do that. I definitely won't waste $1 billion buying a wave pool company, Tony.
Thank you guys very much for listening. If you want to help our business, you can go to patreon.com/humanechoes and sign up to be a patron, starting at $1 and going up to $20. All depends on how much you love us. We appreciate you guys checking this out. Please share it with a friend, and I hope you have an excellent week.
See you guys next time.